Resuming debate, the honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a privilege to rise in strong support of Bill C-224, the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act, as amended by the Senate, introduced by the honourable member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. I want to first of all commend the honourable member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, who I have the privilege of serving on the Justice Committee with, for his leadership and stewardship in raising this important issue and moving this important legislation forward. Mr. Speaker, without more, Bill C-224 is a good bill, it is a needed bill, and it is a bill that will save lives. Mr. Speaker, it couldn't be more timely. It couldn't be more timely because, Mr. Speaker, Canada faces an opioid overdose crisis. It is a crisis that has claimed the lives of thousands of Canadians, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, friends, neighbors, colleagues, gone, taken. It is a crisis that has torn apart families and devastated communities. And it is a crisis that is not slowing down. Mr. Speaker, the opioid crisis is particularly acute in my home province of Alberta. In 2016, Alberta emergency responders responded to some 2,267 opioid-related or fentanyl-related events. 343 Albertans died from a fentanyl overdose. That is up from 257 in 2015 and way up from the 24 who died in 2012. Even more concerning is that we are seeing more and more potent opioids being pushed out onto our streets like powdered fentanyl. Powdered fentanyl is 80 times more potent than morphine. The percentage of deaths in which fentanyl has been detected has increased from 5% in 2012 to 30% in 2015 to a staggering 62% in 2016. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about drug overdoses, the vast majority of drug overdoses occur in the presence of at least one other person. Yet, far too often, individuals who witness a drug overdose don't do the right thing, don't pick up the phone, don't call 911 and get help. One may ask, well, why would someone not call for help? Simple answer is that far too often they're afraid. They're afraid of being charged with a criminal offense. They're afraid of being caught up in the criminal justice system. And so they don't call, they don't act. And the consequences of inaction can be fatal. Mr. Speaker, both the Standing Committee on Health, which I know my colleague, the Honourable Member for Calgary Confederation, serves on, which studied Bill C-224, as well as the Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs, heard powerful testimony from Christine Paradick, the mother of the late Austin Paradick. Austin was a promising high school student. One night he went out to a party and he made a choice that a lot of high school students make. He took drugs and he reacted, and Austin's friends didn't call for help. They didn't call 911. They thought they could handle it on their own. Perhaps they, in part, were worried about maybe the police arriving, maybe charges being laid. may be that they'd be caught up in the criminal justice system. Unfortunately, they weren't able to handle it. And as a result, Austin died at the age of 17. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, Austin isn't alone. There are many, many Austins out there, and there will be many, many more Austins if action isn't taken. That's precisely what Bill C-224 seeks to do. Preventing future Austins by providing immunity from prosecution for individuals who witness a drug overdose, do the right thing, call for help, and as a result of doing the right thing, are found to be in possession of illicit drugs. It's important to note, Mr. Speaker, that Bill C-224 applies in terms of immunity from prosecution to only simple possession. It wouldn't apply to other offenses such as impaired driving or drug trafficking. Moreover, it would only apply to offenses listed in Schedules 1 to 3 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, in other words, street drugs. What Bill C-224 would not do is provide immunity to drug pushers and drug dealers and drug traffickers who are pushing dangerous and illegal drugs onto the streets that are killing thousands of Canadians each and every year. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-224 is legislation that makes sense. And it went to the Senate, and it was amended in the Senate. And I have to say, the Senate did a good job, as the honourable member for Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, pointed out, in improving Bill C-224. There were amendments from that other place, and those amendments would extend immunity from prosecution to breaches of release orders arising from simple possession. Mr. Speaker, those amendments make sense. They are consistent with the spirit and objective of Bill C-224. In that regard, Mr. Speaker, I would submit that it doesn't make sense that someone, a Good Samaritan, should be immune from prosecution on the basis of simple possession, but then charged for breaching a release order arising from the very same simple possession. That would be self-defeating, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, while the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act is new to Canada, it is not a new concept. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, some 37 states plus the District of Columbia have similar legislation on their books, and the legislation that has been passed in the U.S. is having the intended effect. More and more people are calling 911, and as a result, more and more lives are being saved. Mr. Speaker, I urge the speedy passage of Bill C-224 as amended. This legislation is needed. It's needed now. It's needed to save lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.